Assalamu alaikum and greetings, everyone. I am the host of Light Up with Shwa podcast, which is a weekly podcast on conscious living and parenting. And I hope you have watched or listened to this podcast. If you haven't, please do so. And if you like it, please let me know. You can visit my website, lightupwithshwa.com. And I'm on most of the platforms. I don't want to waste too much time because I have two special guests here today. And usually I have one guest. Very few times I had two guests. And I'm really excited for our conversation today. One of my guests' name is Sara Minkara. If I pronounce it wrong, please let me know, Sara. And my second guest is Ahsen Utku. Is that the right way?
Yeah.
Ahsen? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. I will love to introduce them to you, and please let me know if you like this episode or anything you want to learn about Sarah and Ahsen. I will really appreciate. Okay, Sarah, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I am so grateful and honored to be with you all today. Thank you so much for having me with you guys. So, my name is Sara Minkara. Um, I am the founder and CEO of SARAMINKARA LLC, which is a business advisory and consultancy firm that focuses around authentic inclusion and leadership.
Mhm.
We do a wide range of speaking, trainings, workshop, consultancy, etc. We work with corporations, government, nonprofit, and education spaces to bring more value and more better solutions in policy making. I will say I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a troublemaker in most spaces. So that's who
Oh,
I am.
okay. All right. We'll talk about the troublemaking later after Ahsen. Ahsen introduces herself.
Hi, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. So my name is Ahsen Utku. I also thank you for having us here. It's a blessing to be here with you.
Alhamdulillah.
And so I'm a PhD candidate at the Political Science Department at Northeastern University. In my fifth year, hopefully that won't go too far from that, but we'll see. And I also work with Sara as in her business development team as a global engagement catalyst. And and I think we'll talk more about it, but I also see beyond all these labels, I see myself as a wonder and an explorer, and we can get more into that as we
Yeah,
go.
would love to know more what else you guys do, but yeah, we will come to that definitely. And I know like we will learn about Sarah's what troubles that she makes for
Good troubles.
The
good
many
troubles.
troubles, good troubles.
Yes, I know. So thank you for that, both of you. Sarah, I was wondering like empowerment through integration, and you have introduced your organization. I was thinking, what is authentic leadership? Like, how can you describe that if somebody doesn't know from the name? What does it mean really?
So what it means is that, first of all, I believe that leadership is an activity and not a noun, and that we can
Mm,
all be exercising leadership. We all have the power within to really exercise leadership. And when it comes to authentic leadership is how do we really help create spaces where we empower one another to bring our true authentic self forward?
mm,
Because if you think about it, a lot of times we talk about, oh, let's make sure that we have everyone at the table, everyone has a seat at the table, but the question is everyone comfortable being their true self?
mm,
And most times in spaces, no, there's certain parts of ourselves we're hiding. There's certain things we're not comfortable bringing forward. We're afraid of how society is going to see us. Narratives are impacting how we see ourselves. All of these things, right?
mm,
But the more that whenever we're able to bring more of our true self forward, our authentic self forward, more value is brought forward, and that value is for everyone. So authentic leadership is about how can we all exercise leadership to really allow for the authenticity and vulnerability and value to be brought forward, and that's going to allow us then to be able to create better solutions and policy and decision making.
mm. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Of course.
So, are you doing this for any age group? Does it matter? Is it gender oriented to teach and coach and all what you do at your ETI?
So what this whole authentic leadership is within SARAMINKARA LLC, the consulting company, ETI, which is the nonprofit that I founded, that was my first enterprise, empowerment integration, that focuses on disability inclusion. And I'm currently serving on the board there. And in ETI, we actually focus on disability inclusion from a value-based perspective. If you think about it, when it comes to disability in general, we either look at it from the charity lens, oh, we're here to help. At best, we're looking at it from the human rights lens, oh, I guess it's the right thing to do to include people with disability. But we are trying to really come at it from a value-based lens. When we include people with disability, it's a value for all. So inclusion of people with disability is not just the right thing to do, it's actually a value for everyone. That's what we're doing in ETI from that disability narrative perspective. And then with my current consulting company, we actually take it further beyond disability, and we take it across all identities, and we focus on the authentic self, and how do we work with everyone bringing their true authentic self forward. And for me, that really connects with me as a blind Muslim woman, right? I deal with a lot of ableism, I deal with Islamophobia, I deal with sexism. All of us deal with different narratives. And what we do is we get people, and we actually work with a lot across all age groups, whether it's, college students, whether it's employees and at work, whether it's leaders. All of us are dealing with narratives, and we get people to really recognize and realize how narratives in society impact how we see ourselves and how we see one another.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So now you differentiated, like ETI is separate, like it's separate from Sara Minkara LLC, but it's part, like you're part of the board and all. That's very good. And you do for able or disabled for everybody in Sara Minkara's consultancy.
Exactly. Disability is part of the work.
Part of
exactly. And SMLC is actually, it's a company. So this is probably not going to be probably relevant, but anyways, last year I decided to start this new company. So I transitioned from being the CEO of ETI into just a board member, so I can start this consulting company.
Excellent. Yeah. So I had I sent some confusion. Yes. So Ahsen now. Ahsen, you want to tell in what capacity do you work with ETI or Sara Minkara LLC? How does this work? How do you come in?
I work with Sara at ETI. I started off as working in her social media team, and then that transitioned into being the director of external relations. That lasted for a couple of years. After that, I actually started my PhD program, and that was a conflict of my legal status here as an international student. So I had to transition back into volunteering at that point, and I did volunteer on many different levels and a very wide capacity. Even today, whenever I'm needed, I'll just try to want to be there. And today, I'm officially a part of the business development team of Sara Minkara LLC.
Oh, wow!
And so basically, just going wherever Sara takes me,
and keeping Ahsen with me forever.
Oh, mashallah! I don't blame you.
I know, right? Exactly.
As much as I know, and very little, and that little is quite much for me, and that's why I right away connected with her. And she is amazing.
Thank you so much.
And I know you have a sister also. Where is she, Ahsen?
She's here in Boston still.
Okay. Yeah. You're not twins, are you?
No.
Okay. I never asked that. Okay. All right. So those programs that I saw on your website, so people, if you want to go and learn about who Sara is from her website, and she has a lot there, it's very beautifully done website. There's lots of information, and Discovery in the Dark, and everything is, the title is Discovery in the Dark and Other Things in the Dark. Tell me about, why did you choose this word in order for your programs?
Yeah, so we developed this methodology called the In the Dark methodology, and it comes from this whole point of when you're put in a position where you're not able to see, you're not able to make a lot of labels. You're not able to make a lot of assumptions, because for sighted people, 85% of what we take in is visual. Yes. So when you have that constraint of not seeing, you have the constraint of not making assumptions, and that gives you actually the freedom of actually having more vision. So we use the power of blindness, but it has nothing to do with simulating blindness, but use the power of blindness as a tool to really create a space of vulnerability, openness, connection, people really recognizing how certain narratives are really impacting their behavior, because literally when they're in a space and they know no one can see them and they can't see one another, people become more their true self. It's so beautiful because they know no one can see them or judge them. And same thing, what they take in from the person in front of them is more pure because they're not able to make a lot of assumptions. So we take the power of that and we actually create other constraints, but we take the power of that to really engage in tough conversations, whether it's around gender inclusion or disability inclusion or crisis management, whatever the issue is, the challenge, we get people to have more authentic conversations around these topics.
Sure. Thank you so much. Ahsen, do you have anything to say about this area of Sarah's work and how you will be part of it? Or
I
you
mean,
are actually?
she has actually, summarized it in the best way. I would just like to add, as someone, I mean, she has developed this methodology, but as someone who's kind of participated in the events initially, I was a participant in the dark events initially, and then become a part of it. So I've been on both sides of what it means to be exposed to that experience, and also being in the process of the designing and like organizing. It's a very powerful experience, and a lot of the things. So in my PhD expertise, in my grad studies also, I focused a lot on identity building, identities and identity formation, conflict resolution, especially policymaking around these issues. So I do a lot of reading about what it means to be a human being, what it means to be, what is us, what is them, right? So it's a lot of reading and discussion, academic discussion around these issues. But being exposed to that kind of experience is a whole other, layer of exposure to, oh, actually, who am I, and how do I actually interact with these people if you take out all that labels that I just use as shortcuts in my life. So it's a very powerful experience. Even though you think that you're an expert on identities, there's definitely a lot for you to learn.
So it's more experiential learning kind of thing.
It is very experiential.
In that. So I saw some of the workshops that you have. So you, whether you are, not whether, but you are, if you are not blind, you are covering your eyes. And are you referring to that kind of experience also through her workshops? Have you been into her workshops?
Yeah, with the blindness. So those are the ones in person where all the participants are blindfolded. They don't see the room. They don't see who the other participants are. The virtual ones, it's a different format. Obviously, you cannot blindfold people. But you actually the people turn off their cameras and change their names. So it's a different setting. But I don't know, Sarah, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, exactly. So we do them virtually, and like Ahsen said, it's a different setting. And then we've pre-COVID. Now we're going back to this, and we're going back to in person. And people are blindfolded before they enter the room. So they don't see the room, they don't see who they're sitting next to, they don't see any of that. And we take them through that journey, but we make it clear throughout this whole process we're not here to experience how it is to be blind. And we make that very clear, because simulation of blindness is actually, covering your eyes for an hour to 2 hours, you're never going to really understand what it is to be a blind person. Someone who's been blind their whole life has been able to adapt and navigate independently. It's different from someone who's just blindfolds for an hour or 10. So we make that very clear. Yeah.
Yep. No, it's of course we need to differentiate between pre-COVID and now that we are hoping and praying that COVID is going away, and then we are normally we are coming back to normal. And I'm sure then you will have more of these workshops in person as you had. So what the experience, I would ask Ahsen, like, obviously you have eyes and having all these experiences. How can you teach from your experience people who are, I am sure there are many people who don't understand or are not empathetic to this people who are disabled for whatever reason, and how we perceive them. What can we learn from your experience? And then of course I want to ask Ahsen, Sarah, after you.
Well, it's a very important skill, and it's definitely not a skill that you can gain overnight, but it's definitely an important skill to try to learn how to start seeing people beyond their visual labels. And that is not an easy task. I would assume myself to be a very non-judgmental person until I did one of those workshops
That's what I
myself.
wanted to get out.
Yes. And I realized that, oh, I actually judge people a lot, literally first 5 seconds, the way they dress, the way they put on their makeup, the way they behave, their mimics, their weight and everything. It's just like a very instant instinct that we have by having that the first 5 seconds of judging people. And sometimes it's most of the time it could be very, in a neutral, not in a neutral way, but doesn't necessarily have to be, come along with bad intentions always. You just you basically create those shortcuts to make your life easy on a daily basis, right? Instead of recreating a whole new set of category for people, you just refer back to the categories that you have created before in your life from your past interactions. But again, the downside of it is that you might be overlooking a lot of the qualities that person might be bringing to the table if you just take those shortcuts as the only things that define that person. So how do you teach that to other people? Well, the workshops is a one way to do that. And it's as I said, it's definitely not an overnight. You just don't wake up one morning, but it's food for thought. Once you start thinking about it, you also realize a lot of things that you do yourself on a daily basis. You do yourself in the work, and the professional environment, in your family. So it's basically pulling the trigger, and I see these workshops basically pulling that trigger. And once you pull that trigger, you became aware of what you're doing on a daily basis.
Yes, Ahsen. Sorry, I keep switching. Sara, what would you like to tell us?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what Ahsen said. She kind of illustrated really well the experience and the takeaways. And as Ahsen said, we as humans, it's part of our human nature to judge. That's the reality, right? And these workshops are not to eliminate those judgment, or it's not a switch of a button. It's like, oh, you're cured. We no longer judge. It's more about creating that recognition and the realization how we are engaging in those narratives, and we are part of kind of creating those narratives, and really then moving forward and saying, I'm going to be more intentional in pausing, realizing what assumptions I'm making, and trying to put aside those assumptions and approach every single person with the one assumption that this person has something beautiful to contribute. And that's what we're trying to get people to have, that intentional approach with every single person that they meet. It's not easy. All of us judge whether we are sighted or not. I judge through my hearing. I judge through my sense
I
of
was going to
smell.
ask you, how do you judge?
Exactly. We all judge, but these workshops kind of get people to realize and recognize how we judge, and when do we judge, and why do we judge, and also how do judgments impact us. It's both ways of the equation. And one thing we always say throughout the workshop is curiosity through a lens of compassion. Be curious with yourself. Ask yourself questions. Why am I behaving like this? Why am I interacting like this? But through a compassionate lens. Because the more you try to understand yourself through a compassionate lens, the more you're going to start digging deeper into why you behave. And same thing to the other person in front of you. Get to know that person through a compassionate lens and not through an assumption lens. And I always talk about it, you walk down a person with a disability walks down the street, right?
Yes.
A person can approach that person with a question that can be phrased in two different ways. One question is, oh my God, your life must be so difficult. How do you live your life? Whereas the other question is, tell me more about how you live your life. One question has a lot of assumptions to it, that your life is horrible and hard and etc. The other question is very simple. I'm just curious. And that's what we're trying to get people to really approach people with a curiosity through a lens of compassion, not assumption as well.
Excellent.
And I want to add just a quick note. It's actually very therapeutical in that sense as well, because if you go to therapy, that's what basically you do. You try to, you basically, have a dig deeper into yourself as, trying to understand yourself, but through the lens of compassion, you try to be more compassionate.
Right.
So it's actually a lot of people treat these workshops, even in the professional setting, in a very theoretical way.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And we've done this in all kind of spaces, whether it's at the UN, you have the department head who's a female saying, I am more comfortable in this kind of setting to speak my mind, whether with embassy and in crisis management for their leadership team, whether for corporations like, Airbnb, whatever, like it's the same across the board. We've done it across all continents. It's the same. Humans are the same across every single culture and continent. We're just humans, and I think all of us have goodness inside of us, and if we just kind of trigger that awareness and that moment of pause and that moment of curiosity and compassion, it goes back to this whole authentic leadership. We're trying to get people to see the power each of us have the power within to empower others, and that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you so much. Excellent. I was going to say, I read some time ago and tried to understand that it's not bad to judge, but how you, and that's what you explained to me already. I was going to ask you, and you just did a
Because I will
wonderful
say,
job.
yeah, and I will say, look it. We need to judge to some degree. We see a line in front
Yes.
of us. We're not going to be
Yes.
like, oh, let me give the line the benefit of the doubt. No, we're going to run away.
Exactly. Exactly.
But when it comes to
That's it.
humans, we need to be
Yeah.
more aware.
More
And
aware and with
yeah,
compassion. Yeah,
yes.
that's right. Right. Instead of having all those negativities, we can approach it little with less, with
Yes,
less
exactly.
judgment, with more objectivity, or try it and give a chance to the moments and people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really appreciate both of you. Thank you so much. This was really good. And so tell me about your challenges, both of you, whoever wants to go first.
Life challenges, work
Yes,
challenges.
work challenges with well, Ahsen, I am assuming now I'm judging you. Like you have your own different challenges than compared to maybe Ahsen, but I never know. Maybe you both have similar challenges, you know. But your work challenges, especially you being in your this disability that you have, which how do you move on with that? Because I want from you, for people, I know they can go to the website and listen to your talks, but I have you here and today in 2021, and I want people to see, young people to see, older people to see you, how you manage your challenges with all
Yeah.
naturally that now you have, and beyond that, how do
Yeah.
you manage that?
So,
And sorry, I will add one more thing. Why I'm asking this, because we assume that those who are able have no hindrance or no issues and they
yeah.
can be better.
Yeah.
But then when I find people without any physical, let's say some disability, physical, and then and then beyond that, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But I see them who are able are more disabled than
Yeah.
the people who are actually disabled
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's where I want you to give hope to those, that if you can do it, why can't others do it?
Gotcha. So I'll answer this question in a few different ways. First, I believe we're all created imperfectly in a perfect way. And I think that comes from a very faith based perspective. I am blind, and yes, I have technical obstacles that I deal with on a daily basis, but my blindness has been one of my greatest blessings, subhanAllah. And it's been my strength. It's given me resiliency. It's given me purpose. I wouldn't have started these two companies if I wasn't blind. But I was able to embrace my blindness fully in a positive way because I had a support system, family that empowered me. And I go back to empowerment, how empowerment is so important. And for me, empowerment is when you have someone that says, I see you, I hear you, you belong, and you have value, and go explore what that value is, right? And that no one made assumptions of what my value is. I was given that space to explore that. So I think that allowed me then to embrace my blindness. That allowed me to see the beauty behind my blindness. I mean, again, I saw the beauty behind my blindness, so I created the In the Dark methodology. So there's a lot of that. Of course, I do deal with technical obstacles on a daily basis where things are not accessible, platforms are not accessible, when I navigate things on that, there's so many different things. The system in our society it's still not accessible. And we always say the greatest disability for people with disability is society's perception. And that's the reality. The stigma, the ableism,
Yes.
that's our greatest disability, not my disability as being blind. And I always say, there's a reason why God created me the way I am. There's beauty in that. Let me explore that. So though that's, how I perceive kind of my disability. But I do face other challenges as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a manager. Oh my God, I can go so much into that, but I don't know if that's what you want me to
Right.
go
So
into.
you yeah. So how do other people with your or your organization? So they are dealing with you, and you have all those normal challenges, right? Just like any other organization.
Yeah, they're interacting with me, exactly.
Yeah.
And you, the way it goes back to the way you create a company, you create an organization from the get-go to be inclusive and accessible for everyone. So you put systems in place, and it's not just for me, it's everyone. Like, I actually, whenever I hire someone, even in the interview process, I say, what are your needs and accommodations for you to thrive in my company? What do you need? Because we all have our own needs. Whether we are a mother, whether we're a student, whether we are, dealing with health issues, whatever it is, we all are coming with our own multiple identities, our own baggages, our own experiences. And some people, um, need to be managed more closely. Some people don't, it's just, we're all humans.
Sure.
So I wouldn't look at it that because I'm blind, I need more help. It's just because I'm blind, and because you're sighted, and because you're whatever, we all are interacting in different ways, and we need to make sure the system is built to include everyone.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Ahsen, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, we all have challenges on many different levels, and in my personal experience, so I'm originally from Turkey. I've been living in the US for almost 10 years now, but I did go to undergrad in Turkey. I lived in Turkey for most of my life. And the challenges I had to face, I would, kind of put this together with my education life and my professional life, because they're all tied up to each other, in the sense that I had to go through a lot of sexism. And also the time that I was, trying to pursue my higher education in Turkey was a time when, hijabi women were not allowed to the university campuses. So I had to go through that. And it wasn't the easiest thing. It wasn't the easiest challenge, but it was a process, not to justify what the policies that were implemented back then, but it made me question, A, do I really want to carry this as my identity? And B, do I really want to pursue higher education? What does it mean for me? And that's also, like, even the headscarf bans back then was a part of sexism, because all these implementations, the kind of identity, the kind of citizenship that was enforced upon people was in such a gendered way that only affected women, or mostly affected women. And that also applies to the workforce, where I used to work as a journalist back in more than a decade ago. But there was a lot of sexism. The kinds of jobs that I was assigned to came with the assumption that I wouldn't be able to carry out certain tasks, or there was, pay gap, even though I was more educated than them. So, and it's kind of like, and this applies to a lot of women. And then so these are the systemic challenges that most of us have to go through. And then there are other things that, as Sara mentioned, a lot of invisible challenges, individual invisible challenges that people have to go through, like mental health issues.
Yes.
And these are the kind of things that you can't even express or be vocal about it, because there's so much stigma about it. If you start talking about, if you have depression, if you have anxiety, or if you have any other issues, you feel the risk of maybe losing your job, maybe being stigmatized in the society. So the grass is always greener on the other side. So there's you have to go through a lot of systemic challenges, plus a lot of invisible challenges. My takeaway from this process was there were two things, like Sara mentioned about, asking for her, I think what I've learned, it is okay to ask for help. in terms of the process of empowerment,
Yes.
because there are actually people out there who are genuinely willing to help other people, who are genuinely want to elevate other people.
Sure.
And as like my personality, I hate asking for anything for myself, but it is okay. And I know that a lot of, especially women, are like, don't want to ask for help. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to, especially even in the process when I was applying to grad schools from Turkey to the US 10 years ago, everything might be a very burdensome task where you might actually need some help, and that's okay. And the second takeaway is when you are in a position where you can help others as someone else did you in the past, how can you actually accommodate that? If you're in a position where you can elevate other people, are you actually doing that? If you're in a position where you can help someone, and when I say help, this is not, there's a distinction between the notion of charity and versus empowerment. I'm not using it in the charity sense. I'm using it like, are you facilitating the process of, opening up the room for people to be more vocal? Are you helping them to elevate, to lift themselves? So it's a double-edged process, like you asking for help, you asking for your need for being empowered, and then you actually facilitating that when you're in that position.
Thank you. Excellent. All right, let's move to the section on a little bit of parenting and conscious living. Would you talk about your families? Because there's a notion that Muslim women, their families generally. I mean, I'm hoping that we will continue to educate those who don't understand our dynamics. Can you tell me, as Sara did mention earlier, that she has an amazingly supportive family, but I want you to elaborate a little more on it and talk about it, Sara, about your family, that how it has contributed to who you are today, and what are they still doing for you?